broken family. Mum and dad split up when I was very young. Man of the household at like 12 years. I fucking hated anyone telling me what to do. Massive problem with authority, especially undeserved authority. I'm more stubborn than I am disciplined. I refuse to let things go. You have to have the two sides of the coin. We can't see it. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Don't avoid being angry, but don't weaponize it. Don't use it as your only method of doing. You will learn the hard way. So whatever you do will be your karma. You are a living perpetuation of what you are continually doing. Most people fight and struggle against life. We're part of this human experience. That's what we're here to experience. We're not here to make the most money. We're not here to conquer the most achievements. I'm meant to experience the full gamut of human experience. What is that?
Before we jump into today's episode, I have a small favor to ask from you. If you've enjoyed any of the podcasts, any of the content that I've put out, please hit the subscribe button. It honestly helps me so much. It helps this channel in growing bigger. And as you've seen, as the channel grows, the guests grow as well, which means I can provide more value to you, the listener. Thank you and enjoy today's episode. Josh Saunders, welcome to the Better Project podcast, man. Second time in the studio. First time I've seen you, as I said before, you're a big fucking dude, bro. Are you comfortable in that chair?
Yeah, we had to change the lens on the camera so I could fit my face in it, but we're here.
We're here.
We're here.
You're in frame. You're looking good, bro.
Excellent.
How's your morning been?
Good. Yeah. When was I last here? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago.
Feels like it was a couple of days ago.
Time flies, eh?
Yeah. I love doing this stuff, man. I love talking about these conversations. I've listened to a couple of your episodes in preparation for this. Not that I try and emulate anything of anybody, but I like the flow of what you're sort of putting out and the whole crushing the stigma thing. I enjoy that. So,
as I said, I hate fucking small talk, bro. I want to dive straight in. When I was doing a bit of research, you said your upbringing, you didn't quite feel at ease.
Mm-hmm.
What does the listener need to know about yourself to better understand the man that sits in front of us today?
Good question. I don't like identifying it as traumatic per se, because I think if you look at your pathway through your life, perceptually in the moment you could be going through something that is the worst thing you've ever been through, but then 2, 3, 5 years later you turn around and say that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Hindsight's a beautiful thing,
and it happens every single time. So really, in effect, you could start to have hindsight in the present moment, which is where we all want to get to eventually. You'll notice that it's not a difficult thing to go through, or it's not perceptually difficult to go through if you recognize it's going to give you a huge benefit on the other side. So that's kind of how I start to look at my story. And I've been through a bunch of different shit. Moved out of house very early on. I come from a broken family. Mum and dad split up when I was very young. I was kind of the man of the household at 12 years. I had to start making some decisions and sort of be a parent to my younger siblings. I got a twin brother and sister who are 13 months younger than me. So I had a little bit of that, had a big step up in responsibility, and then also a sort of negation of that as I started to get into my late teens, so 16, 17, 18, where I developed this authority complex. I fucking hated anyone telling me what to do. And it really started to drive a wedge between what I wanted to achieve in life and where I was going. And that started to become a bit problematic, so much so that when I was 19, I got arrested drunk driving. I was a street pharmacist at the time. You can make up your minds on what that means. Doing some fucking stupid things. And I basically sat in the Perspex box, had to make a decision. And I said to myself, I'm never going to feel like this ever again. I'm never going to put myself in a situation like this ever again, because I didn't have a valid reason for going to the city and driving off my fucking head. I think I was lucky. I probably blew mid-range, because when I used to drink, it was either I was having none or I was getting obliterated. And I started to become known early on as the kid who could drink a liter of vodka and be sweet. And I used to do it all the time. I remember one time I was 18 or something, and my mates had heard about it. They were my sister's mates. They'd heard about this party trick that I could do, and I was already loaded. So they end up grabbing one, cracking it, and going, "Oh, do the trick." I was like, "All right, fuck it." I think 25 minutes later, I'm full blackout, but I'm still operational, and they're videoing me in an American Indian headdress eating a bowl of Fruit Loops. And then I obviously didn't remember because I was blackout, but on the surface, I looked like I knew what was going on, and I didn't actually come off as if I was blackout. I don't remember a fucking thing at all. And I think that was a very dangerous thing because it's like, oh, I can kind of get away with this. Maybe because I'm bigger or have a better tolerance with alcohol or something like that. And yeah, when I got arrested, I was like, all right, this is a big turning point. No more drinking, no more doing any of this dumb shit, no more hanging out at parties, being a fucking idiot. Even a close event to that, before I turned 19, I was at a house party in Rouse Hill, and there was a big fight out the front and kind of blew over. The parents were very strict Christian Italian parents. So they were like, all right, we're shutting the party down. We're not going to have fights or anything. My house was only 100 meters down the road. So we grabbed everybody and went, all right, fuck it, we'll kick on at my house. Because I was living out at home, mum was away, brother, sister, me, we just wanted to have fun and go party and stuff all the time. So everybody came back. The guys who started the fight had something on for me, and they decided to wait a couple hours, then ended up throwing bricks through the front window. And I looked out the front window. I was like, I'll go clean up the glass that somebody broke. That's what I assumed happened. Looked out the front window. There's big holes in it. There's bricks on the staircase. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. Look out the hole of the window. There's 10 guys there with balaclavas on. And I'm like, oh, this is like really not good. And I was fucked up at the time. So I had like a bit of liquid courage. I was like, fuck this. I'm going to take this on. My mate was physically holding the door shut because I was trying to kick the door in. Opened the door, got glass. That's why I got the Harry Potter scar.
Oh, yeah. I see.
Yeah, it's faded heaps now. But yeah, it's still there. They ended up hitting me in the face with a Smirnoff black ice bottle, probably like the size of this.
Yeah.
And ended up cutting me open. Didn't knock me. I didn't lose consciousness or anything. And I think they kind of went, oh, shit, because that's usually meant to drop people.
Yeah.
Slammed the door, put a tea towel around my head, stopped the bleeding, went to go back outside. Luckily, they'd all left because 10-on-1 is a fucking retard attempt at a fight. That's stupid. You should never do that. And then it wasn't enough that happened because I was still like, oh, that's a one-off. And then I had to get tested the second time by getting arrested. And then when that happened, I was like, oh, okay, this is, I'm starting to see the pattern emerge here, like we were talking about before, pattern recognition. Once you see a couple of those things line up in your life, you can sort of forward project with authority and say, yeah, if I have another big event at 20 along this same timeline, it's not going to be very good. Like I was probably, I don't know, it depends on how the magistrate's morning was that day. I was probably about half an hour going from free to in jail because of my driving record. And they actually did say to me when the cops pulled me up, I used to live in the Central Coast with my mum when I got evicted out of the house that we're living in. Too many parties. So stupid. My brother and sister would have people for kick-ons all the time, fucking 4 a.m., 5 a.m. party, blasting music, dumb shit like that. And I ended up sort of growing out of it a little bit, but they didn't. So they just kept perpetuating the same thing. Anyway, I drove from the Central Coast where I was living all the way to Redfern for South training. And they got me, I wasn't wearing a seatbelt because I just dropped a bunch of food in the passenger seat. So I took the seatbelt off, cleaned it all up, sat back into the chair, and there's a highway bike right next to me. And I was like, oh, spewing. He's like, you're not wearing a seatbelt. I was like, look, you can see all the food that was on the floor. Someone just cut me off, the brakes, blah, blah, blah. Did a shit job explaining what it was because I was nervous because I had no license. And he goes, pull over. I was like, fuck, I'm so done. This is bullshit. It was 500 meters away from training. And I drove like an hour and a half from the Central Coast. So then I got, I had a court thing on that. And the guy said to me, the highway patrol officer, he said to me, he goes, where are you living at the moment? I was like, in Central Coast. He goes, if you got caught up there, you'd be going to jail today. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, there's more people in jail for traffic offenses in the Central Coast than there is any other crime. Because everything's so sparsely, everything's so sparse up there. It's all so distant.
Yeah.
You have to drive a lot. So you make a lot of mistakes because a lot of people drink drive.
Mm-hmm.
If you drink driving in Sydney, not that I fucking condone this whatsoever, but if you're going from Penrith to St. Mary's, it's a 10-minute drive and you're not really covering a lot of space to go places. Whereas if you're going from, I don't know, Gosford to any of the other
you're on the highway at high speeds.
Exactly. So I think they're putting the foot down and making examples of people.
Which is fair enough.
It is fair enough. You shouldn't fucking drink drive.
Yeah.
It's stupid. But yeah, so I kind of had that, and then I went into community service. I got 50 hours of that I had to do at Windsor Salvos, which was the worst. Like if you ever have to do community service, I hope you don't have to, but fuck, it sets you on the straight and narrow because it's horrible.
What'd you have to do there?
I had to move furniture, which doesn't sound bad on the surface. But the fucking piece of shit that worked there had the biggest superiority complex, and he knew that he could just add hours to our sentence if we like back chat or didn't do what he said. So he'd go, Tuesday afternoon I'd get there, or Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon the whole shop would be rearranged. Thursday I get there and he wants it back to where it was on Tuesday.
Just to be a girl.
Just to be a fuckwit. Just to be a proper fuckwit. And I had to do those hours in completion before I went to go for my preseason in Canberra. So I had no choice but to fucking just eat all the shit that cunt gave me. And if we rewind back a bit, massive problem with authority, especially undeserved authority. So this was kind of like another fuck you from God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And like, if you don't start behaving, this is going to continue. So I think in a sense, like I said at the start, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. That row of years, that 1, 2, 3 years set me up to be where I am today. And it's kind of, you can make it poetic in a sense. You could always look at negative things in your life and then see the trail off of the back of them and you go, oh, you know what? If I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have had the motivation to do this. If I didn't go through this, it wouldn't have steered me in the right direction to start doing this. So I think for the majority of people listening, it's like, oh, fuck, I'm going through such a hard time right now. Be grateful for that, because that's going to set you up to go to where you need to go next. And you couldn't be where you're going to be without that event happening.
Definitely. And I think we live in a society as well, like with traumas and stuff like that, it's like it's seen as, oh, you got to work through it. It's such a bad thing. But you just said those traumas, that dark side of us, it's such a big motivating factor for us to actually go out and take action and do shit. Imagine if your life was all sunshine and rainbows, nothing would get done. So you need those traumas. You need the dark side of you to actually go out there and achieve the things that you want to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the myth of modern society, and Alan Watts talks about it very, very well. He talks about people perceptually wanting their life to go all good all the time. So if you play a game with yourself and you say, all right, well, let's say that every night you went to sleep, you had the ability to dream 75 years of time every single time you went to sleep. So 8 hours would pass in real time, but you could experience 75 years, and you're in complete control of everything, every outcome. For the first couple of nights, you would experience every pleasure that you could possibly think of. All the yachts, all the boats, all the cars, all the women, all these sorts of things. You'd be absolutely infatuated with the idea. And then a couple of weeks would go by and you're like, all right, well, I'm kind of getting over this. Like pleasure. Yeah, it's fun. I get to eat grapes on the golden chair and drive Bugattis and all this sort of shit, and all these things that we think we want. And then you go, it's a bit boring now because I know what I'm going to get and I know it in advance, and I can just snap my fingers and I have $500 million, or snap my fingers and I live in Costa Rica in a castle, whatever. And then you go, maybe I want to switch it up a little bit. Let's have a surprise. And then you have a surprise and you're like, oh, that was really fun. That was exhilarating. I didn't know it was going to come. And then you go, let's see how far out I can take the surprise and still make it to the finish line. So then you start taking larger and larger out gambles. You start going to crazy lengths and fighting dragons and conquering cities and going into wars and doing all these sorts of things where you barely survive. But the exhilaration starts to come up. The enjoyment starts to come up. And then you go, okay, let's do that, but I don't control it. Let me never know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's going to be this constant game of figuring out the surprise the whole way through. And eventually you get to the stage where you're living the exact life you're living right now, same as the life I'm living right now. We could have our best guess of what's going to happen next. Like if you start going to the gym every single day for the next 3 years, you're going to look better than when you started.
Yeah.
That's an absolute guarantee.
But you don't know exactly how you're going to look.
You don't know how good you're going to look, and that is up to you. But the outcome of that, like your dedication, absolutely your control. The things you put in your mouth, your control. The sessions that you do or do not go to, your control. What the result is, who knows? Who knows where it's going to take you? But that's the exciting part. The shadow side of the light is the known, technically, and the unknown is the shadow side, because we don't really know what's going to be down the dark alley. We don't really know what's going to be on the other side of the mountain, but it's worth figuring out, because you're never really going to know. But that doesn't mean you don't start climbing it. That doesn't mean you don't start walking through, because if you don't walk through, you risk not getting the beneficial, exciting journey out of it. And what's the fucking point of that? Exactly.
We all have a choice, and in society, the fear of the unknown, I think, holds a lot of people back, and it held me back for so long. I struggled a lot with anxiety, where I used to try and play out all the scenarios in my head of what could happen, all the negative things. Like I'd walk into a room like this and where's all the emergency exits? Why are you looking at me like this? What are the cameras? All that kind of stuff. And that held me back from going out there and taking opportunities because if I didn't know what was going to happen, I'm just going to stay in my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I leaped into discomfort, that's where the growth came. That's where the opportunities came. I started this podcast. I didn't know I would be in this studio 4 years later.
Yeah.
12 months ago, I didn't even know I was going to be. I was in a spare bedroom in my parents' house.
Yeah.
But just by putting in the reps and making a choice to turn up each and every day, things kind of just fall into place.
Yeah.
But you don't know until you make that choice.
I talk about this a lot when I talk about jiu-jitsu, and people go, 13 sessions a week, that's crazy. You must be so dedicated. You must be so disciplined. And yes, I am both of those things. And I'm more stubborn than I am disciplined. I refuse to let things go. Not in a bad way, but I refuse to be anything less than the best of myself. But I really don't see it as a disciplined activity whatsoever because I really fucking enjoy it. And I think if you sort of guide yourself to those mechanisms of pursuing things that you really enjoy, like you really enjoy having conversations, there's no doubt about that. You find that it's a naturalistic approach. It starts to become seamless. You don't have to put in drive and effort. Like if you and I to go run, I'm going to fucking hate every second of it. And it's going to be painstaking. It's going to be annoying. I'm not going to continue to do it. Does that mean I'm not disciplined? No, not at all. It means that I'm forcing myself to do something that I probably don't enjoy. And yes, there has to be some element of that. You're not going to enjoy every single faction of everything that you do. But if you could focus on doing things because you enjoy them, you will get better at them because you keep doing them because you enjoy them. And the better you get, the more you're going to enjoy it. And it's this unique symbiotic relationship where it's a natural process. It feels natural for you to do it. You ever watch Roger Federer play tennis?
Yeah.
There is no struggle on that man's face. It's picturesque, beautiful tennis. And like even watching Kimi Räikkönen drive a car around an F1 track, you're not seeing them like strain and struggle and resist. It's like art is what you're watching. And it's because they've fallen in love with it. It's not necessarily an obsession, but it's like, how could I not do this? I enjoy it so fucking much that I couldn't not do this. I wouldn't know what else I would be doing. I get that question all the time. They say, if you weren't doing jiu-jitsu, what would you be doing? I'm like, I'm not going to waste energy in my head thinking about other scenarios for things that I probably wouldn't be enjoying as much as what I'm doing now. That's wasted mental energy to me. Similar to your story with the anxiety thing. It's wasted mental energy because all you're trying to do is make the unknown known, which is an exercise in futility. I love this analogy and I use it all the time. Life is like floating down a river. You can attempt to swim against the current, but you're going to end up in the same place and you're going to be exhausted versus the person who goes with the flow and ends up in the same place as you, but they had a fucking awesome time the whole way down. Huge difference.
Catching the waves.
Exactly. And you're not going to be exhausted because you're not fighting against life. Most people fight and struggle against life. Well, I should be doing this and I should be doing this. I have to do this. I have to do this. No, you don't. You absolutely do not. I talked about this to personal training clients every single fucking time. They're like, oh, well, I have to come to the gym. I said, where's the man in the balaclava with the 9mm in your face, in your bed at 6 o'clock in the morning saying, you have to go to the gym? It's not true. You don't have to come here. Let's instead play this game. Instead of you saying, I have to on any given subject that you want, say, I get to. I get to go to the gym. It seems like a much more natural process. And you do, because you extrapolate it and reason with it all you want. You can say that kids in Africa have to go to fucking get their water and they don't even have an opportunity to better themselves in the gym because they don't even have access to electricity. Whereas you literally do, and it's a benefit and a privilege that you get to do. There's nothing involved that you have to do. You don't have to eat healthily if you don't want to. You really don't. You look at the gross majority of Penrith and they've fucking chosen the opposite.
Yep.
It's very simple to see. And even that little switch made a huge difference in my mindset. Like, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. I get to do these things.
It's popular.
And if you keep perpetuating that in your mindset, you're going to start to change the way that you look at things. And the things you look at don't change. You change the way that you look at them. And if you can start to say to yourself, I get to do this, that's fucking awesome. Like, imagine if I came in here today, I'm like, oh, fuck, I have to do this. This can't ask me to be on it. Fuck shit. It'd be a disgusting conversation. Yeah. It wouldn't be a fun and enjoyable process for either of us because you've taken time out of your day to start to build this platform and have good conversations. And then I've taken time out of my day to assist in that role. But rather than that, I'd say I get to share information that I'm really passionate about. I get to change people's perspectives on things. I get to espouse them to different sorts of mindsets and open up their perspective. I think that's great. I think it's worthwhile. And then I'm like, oh, cool. I can actually really enjoy this. Doesn't matter where the conversation goes. I get to.
Yeah. Changing that framework so powerful. And I got picked up on this in my personal life because I'm a father of my little girl, 1.5-year-old. And I said to someone, oh, I have to look after my daughter today. And he's like, you have to?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to a degree, yes, but that is your daughter. You get to look after, you get to spend time with her and build a stronger relationship with her. Don't say have to. Like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, fuck. I think because I was so conditioned to say, I have to do this. I have to go to work. I have to go to the gym. But as soon as you change that framework, it's like, oh, I get to go to the gym. I get to spend time with my daughter. I get to come to the studio and have amazing conversations. Puts you in such a positive state of mind to be like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Like it brings the energy up because if you, like you said, if you're like, oh, I don't want to go on this podcast and you came in here today with that energy, I'd be able to feel it. I'm like, oh, fuck. We'd both be like, I can't wait for this to be over.
Yeah.
And I've been in conversations like that before and I was like, please end, please end, please end.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that instance.
Yeah. You don't want to be in that instance in life. You don't want to be watching the clock of life. That's some of the worst positions you put yourself in essentially are like when you're in school and you're like, fuck, bro, I can't wait for 6th period to finish. So I go home, smash some snacks, play some COD, do whatever I want to do. And that kind of sets you up for the perfect mentality of how you should operate in your life. Like if you don't enjoy what you do every day, let's say you're a brickie and it's the thing that you don't want to do, you could still exchange that for, I get to do this. I still get to earn money so that I could potentially put some money to the side, start a side hustle, start doing things that I really want to do with my life. You still don't have to knuckle drag your way through those things. Although it might not be your personal preference, you can find ways to enjoy it. And if you can start to do that, your life completely changes itself. You can start to be grateful for the things you have. I struggled with this whole gratitude thing because I used to force it. Yeah. Because it was against things that I really wasn't grateful for. I read Rhonda Byrne, The Secret, and then she has a follow-up book about gratitude. Mm-hmm. And it has all this gay shit in it. Like you get a gratitude rock and you say thank you to the rock and like, it's fucking strange. It's very, very strange. I can't say that it didn't work though, because I am extremely grateful for my life and where I am now. But I think that was maybe one small step in the longer journey. I think you start to exchange those things. It becomes a more natural process when you focus on doing the things that you enjoy, or rather perceiving the things that you must do as things you get to do. And you can completely augment it and change it. I'm sure afternoons with your daughter are much better when you're excited to do it, not begrudgingly so. It makes a huge difference. And just like you would be able to pick up the energy of me if I said, I have to do this, our kids can do that too.
Do you have like nieces and nephews, anything like that?
Yeah.
Bro, how much do they lift your energy up when you're around them? They're just full of laughter, happiness.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. My old man told me a story. It was pretty fucking sad that my mum's a fucking psychopath, like proper pathological liar, has never lived in truth in her entire life. It's long story. But anyway, he was basically working to support 3 kids, a missus, and pay a mortgage. And she wasn't doing anything. And like maybe in the early 2000s, that was a little bit more viable now than now rather. But still not a fucking easy thing to do. Going out, breaking your back to support a family, not getting a thank you for it, all that sort of thing. Most men go through that, I assume, that are parents. He goes, every single time I pulled in the driveway, I knew that you guys would be waiting at the door because you see the lights come through. And he goes, fuck it, made it all worth it. He goes, it made it all worth it every single time. You open the door and your 3 kids are like, fuck, dad's home. That's so cool. And you can start to focus on that. It's like, fuck, this is why I'm doing this. This is why it means so much to me. This is why it makes such a big difference. Like I think about, I talked on my podcast yesterday about numerology. Basically, you add up your days of your birth. So mine's 15th of March, 1997. You add up all the individual digits into a 2-digit number. Mine's 3 and 5. You add 3 and 5 together, it's 8. And basically you punch it into Google and it gives you like a life path sort of thing. Fucking fascinating. Definitely recommend you do it. Anybody listening, definitely recommend you guys do it as well. But mine is basically people will seek motivation from you because you're a natural leader. People will start to follow behind you because of your relentless pursuit of becoming the best. Like word for word, that's literally what it says. Fucking crazy.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Literally. And I said to myself when I was 16, Ziz was starting to get popular and the gym was starting to become a massive thing. And I've been training for a couple of years. And I said to myself, I'm like, if this Persian kid from the same area that I was from can do this, I can do it as well. I said, by the time I'm done, by the time I fucking kick the bucket, whenever that is, 1 million people will have a better life because I existed. Like I want to make a massive dent. And I've always had this through my subconscious. I'm not sure why it permeates through. There's a decent theory to say that determinism is a law that is not accurately represented for most people. Some people that believe in determinism believe that your story is completely written out. There's no free will. You can't do anything about it. That is I guess, a very elementary understanding of it, as far as I'm aware. From my perspective, it's like your higher version of you has a plan based off your previous existence. So if your previous existence, you were conquering financially and it led you down a straight path of hedonism and all that sort of thing, it will go, okay, so in the next incarnation, we have to change that up. We have to make sure they're relationship savvy. We have to make sure they're health savvy. We have to flip the switch so that they can get to the afterland or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
So you believe in past lives and stuff?
Absolutely. Absolutely. How do you know you're awake right now?
You don't.
How do you know you're awake right now? It's a trick question. Because you've been asleep.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the black to the white, you wouldn't know either. Like the only reason I know you're sitting right there is because of your background.
Yeah.
If you were the entire background, I wouldn't be able to differentiate you between you and background. I can't differentiate top and bottom if you take the bottom off. So the only reason you know you're awake right now is because you have been asleep. Second question, how do you know that you're alive? Because you have been dead.
Okay, yeah, wow.
It's just two sides of the same coin. It's more of a undulating thing, like summer and winter, right? Or day and night. We don't separate the two. They're two sides of the same coin. So life and death is the exact same thing. This is why being locked up forever in the cosmic black box into nothingness doesn't exist. Because for the side of non-existence, there must be existence. You can't get to a stage where you don't exist. It doesn't happen.
Do you feel our spirit passes on into
Absolutely.
another, say, child being born?
Yeah, and there's proof for it. There's proof for it. C.T. Fletcher had a heart transplant from a woman. He gets thoughts from her as a result of the heart transplant being inside of him.
Really?
Yep. He gets very interesting thoughts. He said he's become a much more solemn person as well, a much more gracious person. He's not as rambunctious as he was before. And he says that all the time. And you start to get that with a lot of organ transplants from a lot of different people. And that's something to be said about the energetics and the vibrations of situations that we can't see because of our limited sense view. Even another good story, one of my mates ended up going to jail for some undisclosed things. And Ivan Milat was in the same wing. Terrible, terrible fucking dude. The Aboriginals, who were very in touch with their spiritual side, would not go fucking near the cell. They go, there's spirits in there. Don't want to be fucking near it. Absolutely. They told everybody else, don't go near it. There's fucking bad things in there and it will attach to you.
Wow. Yeah, I believe we are all energy. And this whole spiritual realm and stuff like that. It's how deep do you go? Now, I assume you go pretty deep into it.
Oh, yeah. Well, our five senses, right, are the only thing that we can perceive this material world with. And all we're really changing into what we see right now is vibration. That's all it is. It's vibration of different photons. It's undulations of different time and physics and how it all goes together. I'm not the best at explaining it because I'm not a physicist. But if you think about it like this, on the radio, on the light, the UV light spectrum, we only have like this much of the entire thing. Whereas the entirety of the spectrum is this. So bees see in ultraviolet. Snakes see infrared naturally. We have to use infrared goggles that we've developed from studying snakes. And bees live in this completely different world where they see ultraviolet. So if those two organisms exist and they can see completely different things that we can't see, well, then what else is there? Like dolphins and whales communicate in sonar, so can bats. We can't hear the frequency because our ears aren't attuned to that sort of thing. So maybe they're flying around picking up fucking AM radio while they're going through their caves and shit. And they're going, what the fuck are these guys talking about? But just because we can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And this is what we're sort of going to get to down the rabbit hole of like quantum physics. And now we're starting to realize that things that are separated by distance and time can actually communicate with each other, irrespective of the distance and time. Joe Dispenza talks about that a lot. He's talking about quantum entanglement and epigenetics, and the fact that you can communicate to other dimensions to start to manifest your own reality. It's just that we have this limited view perception of it because we are a slave to our five senses, essentially. It's also a benefit because we're part of this human experience. That's what we're here to experience. We're not here to make the most money. We're not here to conquer the most achievements. We're not here to do any of that shit. We're not here to exist to achieve. We're here to exist to experience the full gamut of human experiences. And this kind of destroys the stigma, to use your thing, of I want to avoid negative experiences. I don't want to feel depressed. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel nervous. Why? That's just halves of the same coins of emphatic, happy, joyous, loving. Like what's the opposite to nervous? Excited. It's the same physiological response in your body. Your palms get sweaty, your heart rate elevates, and you decide what it is. You get to say, fuck, I'm nervous.
That's my perception of anxiety now. So there were studies where they studying anxiety and excitement, same thing. On a physiological level, same thing.
Identical.
So now I'm like, oh, I might be feeling a bit anxious. No, I'm excited.
Yeah.
And once you flip that perspective, right, I don't let anxiety fucking hold me back anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm excited. And when it pops up, I now see it as a sign of something that I need to go towards.
Yeah.
As soon as I flip that perspective, bro, I've been building momentum and just opportunities and growth has come my way ever since I did that. And anyone can do that. Anyone can flip their perspective. You can either let a label become your identity, or you can fucking disattach from it and be like, okay, cool, I may experience depression, anxiety, ADHD, whatever the case is, but that is not me.
Fuck, I've got so much to riff off on the back of that.
Let's go.
Fuck, where do we start? First of all, anxiety is nothing to be avoided. It's just a natural part of a human existence. You're meant to feel anxious. And the cool thing about anxiety and even fear as an extrapolation of that, because really we only get anxious in relation to fears of something bad happen. Fear is your guiding mechanism to move forwards. When it is the most terrifying to jump, that's when you jump. And everything on the other side of that, diving deep into the dark or the unknown, is the fucking best. The best experiences you'll ever have. Like I started my personal training business. I had $500 in savings. And that's not a lot for like a 22-year-old or 21-year-old or whatever the fuck it was. And the ABN and the registration and all that sort of stuff knocked me down to about $500. And I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. I was on the train. I had to go. So I had a broken leg from playing footy. And I was on the train all the way out to fucking Smithfield. And I had to go pick up my Cert 4 certificate from TAFE because I needed that to register for my business. So I went all the way out there on crutches. I had to crutch through a university. Universities are gigantic when you can't use two legs. So I got the biggest tricep pump on earth. I'm going, holy shit, when is this going to end? I got the certificate and I went back on the train, and it was about an hour train ride. And I'm sitting there thinking, do I do this? Like, I'm going to have like no money, no safety, no security. I've got rent coming out. I've got fucking food, all this sort of shit. And something just clicked in me where that fear just completely subsided, like Moses parted the sea. And I was like, do it. And I was like, fuck, all right, I'm doing it. And every time I've done that, every time I've jumped into the dark side, it's always been the best experience. And I've done it a couple of times in my life where even starting Jiu-jitsu, I didn't know what that was going to be like. And it came off the back of my best mate saying, do you want to do some karate in the garage? And I was like, yeah, okay, let's go do it. Jumped in, had a really good time. And then as soon as lockdown finished, as soon as I got my license back, I went straight to my first session. Then I did a minimum of 3 sessions until we start speaking today, where I'm doing 13 sessions a week. And it's just been a continuation of that. I'm in the top 1% people in the world, essentially. There's only a certain amount of people who've ever competed at ADCC, which is widely considered the Olympics of our sport. And I did it in less than 2 years.
So what do you rank? Is there rankings?
There is rankings. Unfortunately, it doesn't include a lot of the Australian athletes because it's based off a lot of the American competitions and like no-gi worlds and stuff like that. At the time, for all the people who won trials, I was ranked 11th of all the trials winners. So there's one winner from each category, 66 through 99. So 66, 77, 88, 99, 99 plus. And then there was 2 trials for each region. So North America, Brazil, Europe, and Oceania. So there's about 80 people. I don't know, 50. Yeah, because the invitees would take up the most of it. I think there's 96 people who compete at the competition. And about half of those have to earn their spot. And about half of those are invited back from previous experiences. So if they win a title, they get to come back. If they come first, second, or third, they get to come back. If they're like a legend in the sport of they won previous events, they get to come back as well. But out of those 50 or so people, I was ranked like number 11 or number 8. I don't remember.
Shit. So is Jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Is it a big sport? Because the only experience I've had with it was with like footy, where we did like a training session once and doing wrestling technique.
Yeah. Thanks to the UFC, it's skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of being on the precipice of, let's say, like 2013 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So like where I am right now in the sport is the biggest opportunity of all time, because it's just starting to like teeter over the edge. And you could essentially be like one of the Chuck Liddells for the UFC, or one of the Randy Couture's for the UFC, like right when it just started, right when it started picking up fame and notoriety and everything else. You just get catapulted all the way through. I think as more people look at like self-defense, more people look at the UFC, more people get interested in MMA and all that sort of stuff, they're going to see a natural inclination towards jiu-jitsu. Most commonly because striking sports tend to have a lot of dickheads that train it. There's a lot of egos. Yeah, a lot of egos, and you can get away with it because there's always a puncher's chance. But there are never any accidental submissions. You're never going to fall into a submission. Like, yeah, you can strength your way through a couple of things, but it's never going to be advantageous. And I can get a 66 kilo guy that could wrap you up into a pretzel, and now you're like, oh shit, back down to the bottom of the pecking order. So yeah, jiu-jitsu is one of those cool things where you can train 100% every single day and not get injured, not get hurt, not have any physical consequences. You're not going to get knocked out. You're not going to get teeth shattered, or maybe like in the very, very rare occasions where you get elbowed in the face, you have a busted lip for a little bit. But against the striking sport where your shins are going to be hurt, your legs are going to hurt, your hands are going to hurt, it's a very, very big difference.
Might have to give it a go.
It's fucking awesome. It's been massively influential for me.
When you were talking about how quickly you progressed, what stood out for me is you said pure cunt.
Yeah.
How so?
It's a common answer because it's kind of, you ask a stupid question, you get a stupid answer. And people are trying to look for the secret sauce, and there really isn't a secret sauce. There are a myriad of different things that made me progress very, very quickly. And it started from age 4 when I started kicking a footy. Like, you can't replicate what I've done because I'm my own unique individual with my own unique experiences. I've done 12 years weightlifting. I've done 12 years of mindset study. I've been infatuated with the idea of becoming the best version of whatever it is that I chose to do.
Where did that come from? The infatuation of being the best version of you?
I think, honestly, it goes back to what I was speaking about with that like higher self perpetuation, where that's the thing that oversees all of the incantations of all your different lives. Like, you die in this one, you come back in this one, you die in this one, you come back in this one. I think really when you start to get to the precipice of, like in Indian culture, they think that you sort of have to get towards a stage where you become enlightened. It's one of those sorts of things. And I think I might be, not that I'm fucking enlightened at all, but I think that I might be getting closer to the end of the existence where you start to transcend and go to the next elevation of whatever this is. You start to escape the human condition.
Have you done psychedelics?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
got to fucking rip a story about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear that?
Yes.
Okay. So in the same context of me either drinking 0 drinks or going 1,000, I kind of took the same approach to mushrooms. So my first time ever, I did 3. I was with my best mate, Zach, who got me into jiu-jitsu. Yeah. We went to Narrabeen and walked around the beach at nighttime. And it's really cool because there's like a lagoon there and there's the waves, and hear the waves rolling in. It's very serene and it's nice and cool. And anyway, so I was like, all right, that was hectic, but I want to do it by myself and I want to go fucking deep dive. So the next time I did it, I did 5, which is considered a hero's dose by Terence McKenna. Had a really good experience about that. Started to freak out a little bit, and then these digital green geckos came from all corners of my vision and started licking my face and telepathically telling me that I was okay. And I was like, oh, this is cool. The next time I did it, I bought 10 grams and I was going to split it into 7 because I only wanted to do 7. I didn't want to go too crazy. Then I had this weird autistic thought that I was like, well, I can't leave 3 left over because that's going to be a down step and that doesn't make sense. So I don't want to waste any, and I don't know how long I'm going to do till the next time I do it, because I don't do anything by compulsion. The next time I do mushrooms, I'll be called to do it. Essentially, every single time I have an epiphany of the next time that I'm going to do it, I do it. It's been 18 months since this last one. And then before that, it was 6 months. And then before that, it was a year. So it's very up and down of when I'm sort of called to do it. Typically, what I look out for is that Aubrey Marcus will start coming back into my news feed and I start paying attention to him a little bit more. It's a very natural, organic process. But I did the 10 because I didn't want to waste the 3. And that was fucked. That was way too much. I was out in nature for the first time, apart from the beach, because I usually do it in my bed blindfolded because I want to get the full sensory deprivation experience. And that was like going in the Millennium Falcon, just going, still good, still got a lot from it. But the 4th time I did it, did 5 grams again, went back into my bedroom, blindfolded, shut out everything. And I play this music. It's called Music for Mushrooms by East Forest. Got that off Aubrey Marcus, and it's basically got like ayahuasca, Icaros, the songs that they sing to you when you do ayahuasca. And it's got like Amazon rainforest sounds and trees cracking and water dripping. It's very, very nice. It's nice to listen to even if you're not doing mushrooms. It's like quite a nice soundtrack. So anyway, I get through probably 3/4 of what was the main experience. And I go, fuck, I want to write some of this down. I had a big overarching theme of like the warrior monk. So like kind of like Miyamoto Musashi, like the samurai warrior. You have to be good at calligraphy. You have to be good at fighting. You have to be good at relationship building and community building. You have to provide and do all these things. You have to be a multidisciplinary person, essentially. And it just kept ringing through my head. And I started to like really start to infatuate myself with the idea. I'm like, I've got to write some of this down. As I was writing it down on my phone, I got shot out of my body, 3rd person experience. And I'm watching myself type on my phone. My great granddad, who died when I was 2, starts speaking to me. And he goes, hey Josh, it's Granddad Blue. We called him Granddad Blue. I don't fucking know why. Anyway, so he goes, I've been requested to come and give you a message because I'm the one that you'll listen to. And again, this sort of appeal to authority thing. I didn't really know who he was, so I don't have a problem with him having an authoritative position. Anyway, so he says, I've got to tell you something, like you got to stop taking your life so seriously. And I'd just gone through a relationship breakup, 5 years. I didn't see it coming and it fucking shattered me. It was my first long-term relationship. Ended up like just a mess. Still went to training, still did the things I needed to do. I never compromised on that stuff, but emotionally it was fucking up and down. It was fucked. It was the worst thing. Anyway, he goes, you have to stop taking your life so seriously. So I write that down. I write down some of the chat that we had, and I forgot most of it, but that's the core thing. I still have it in my notes today. Anyway, I wake up the next morning and I'm like, fuck, wow, that was pretty cool. I get this feeling to ring my nan and go see them because my granddad, who was my great-granddad's son, still alive. They live 5 minutes down the road from me. I rang my nan. I said, hey, I've got some stuff to do today, like some groceries and stuff, but I want to come over. And she goes, oh, really? Why? I said, I had a dream. I didn't want to explain mushrooms to him. I said, I had a dream and I spoke to Granddad Blue. And she's like, really? And they're like pretty in tune with this stuff. They were pretty receptive with this stuff. And my granddad told me a story. I won't go into it, but along the same lines of like a spirituality sort of thing. He had a voice in his head to do something and he did it. I was like, oh, this is cool. I didn't think they would be too receptive of that. Anyway, so I go over there and I said, hey, Granddad Blue spoke to me last night and he said, stop taking your life so seriously. And my granddad spat out his fucking teeth. And he looked at me and he goes, I don't know how to tell you this, but when he came back from World War II, he was shell-shocked as fuck. PTSD, real skittish, fucking hated social interaction. He ended up buying a farm in Richmond and pretty much living the rest of his days out there, tending to the grass and the goats and the cows and all that sort of thing. And he just became this fucking vile, grumpy old fuck, like really impacted by what he saw. And he saw all of his mates die. Like he was in one platoon where everybody else died except for him. Like you can't fucking come back to society and think that that's going to work. Anyway, so my granddad goes up there one day and he was getting on. I think he was starting to experience a bit of dementia and stuff like that. And he says, he goes, you know what? you're a fuckwit. He goes, you've lost your sense of humor. You need to go back and find out. You're taking yourself too seriously. 7 days later, he died. Never spoke to him ever again. That was the last sentence my granddad ever said to his dad. And I ate some fucking shrubs from the ground, and then he comes back to tell me that because I was repeating the cycle.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I get goosebumps every time.
I can feel that energy.
Every single time I tell the story, it's fucking insane. And I think the reason, to answer your question as to why I think like I have to be the best, is because every family has like a black sheep in their family, and I'm absolutely that. Like I've always been addicted to the idea of becoming better, becoming more, becoming better, becoming more, not even in relation to anybody else. Couldn't give a fuck about what anybody else does, but to leave such a large impact, to essentially be the asteroid that hits the earth that makes the big crater. And I've always had that. Like ever since I've had a waking thought, I've always remembered that. Whether it was me at like 3 years old memorizing Pokemon or like any of that sort of shit, like I needed to be the best at what I was going to do. And I think in a sense, it's like whether you want to talk about your higher self or spirit guides or guardian angels or anything like that, I think that's sort of the perpetuation of that narrative. And I think if you don't pay attention to that stuff, I think if you, especially as men, when we're told don't feel emotions, be hard, be tough, be all those sorts of things, not you can't be that, but if you alienate, like I was saying, the only reason I can see you here is because you're separated from the background, but you're two halves of the same coin. You're actually identical intrinsically. Extrinsically, you couldn't be more different, but intrinsically, you're identical. That's the same as masculine and feminine. We both have feminine sides, whether we like it or not. And it's not girly or gay or whatever the fuck people want to say. It's intuition. It's emotional intelligence. It's these sides of things. And I think that people are starting to neglect that side of things. They're not paying attention to their gut feelings. And it's not a lot of people's faults. We're being fucking chemically castrated every which way from Sunday, whether it comes to the drinking water, the food, the TV, the EMFs, any of these sorts of things, the way that we live in cities, all that sort of stuff. But paying attention to that side of things, Carl Jung talks about it in like the light side versus the dark side. You integrate this shadow side. For men, the shadow side of them is the feminine. For women, the shadow side of them is the masculine. So they're not going to have a good reception for that side of things naturally. They got to work on it. Just like we have to be working on emotional viability. I'm sure you have situations with your daughter and you're like, fuck, when she's 18, I want to be able to communicate with her emotionally. Yep. I don't want to be this hard-ass dad that she hides things from, all that sort of stuff. We have to work on that because it's difficult for us to do. We were born as conquerors, providers, protectors. Couldn't come any more naturally. To work on the other side of things is the most important. And when you start to integrate your shadow side, whatever that is for you, you start to see these synchronicities happen. You start to get these magical moments, these mystical experiences, and it happens more and more and more and more and more. So much so, like my missus was doing a beauty course on Wednesday in Hornsby. Sent her a text before I left training, driving to lunch. I'm about to get there, probably like 2 minutes away. I look next to me, there's a garbage truck. It says Council of Hornsby. 2 seconds later, she sends me a message. Because I intrinsically thought, oh, Talia's in Hornsby today. That fucking second, her message comes up. And I was like, fuck, that's crazy. How cool is that?
It's like when you see a car everywhere and then you buy a car and then you see it everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. But you don't downplay those things. They're not accidents. There are no accidents. There are no coincidences. There are no mistakes. Anybody judging themselves for their past, like, oh, I made a mistake. Again, probably the worst thing that happened to you is going to be the best thing to happen to you. Just let it cool, like give it some time. Then you're going to see it in a completely different perspective. So we don't actually make mistakes at all. We're meant to fail when we fail, but just like you in the background, failure is on the opposite side of the coin to success, inextricably linked. How many times do you do a podcast where you forgot to press record or you fucking didn't have batteries in the camera or anything like that? That gave leeway to conversations like this.
But off the back of that, how much did I learn?
Exactly.
Continuous power packs. Make sure the SD card's in there. Make sure to press record.
Yep.
Just by making those mistakes, you learn off the back of it. And that's how you grow.
Exactly. And it sets you up for the successes down the road. And it's the same thing. It's like, if you think about karma is not necessarily the receipts of what you do. In Buddhist philosophy, it's actually your doing. So whatever you do will be your karma. You're a living perpetuation of what you are continually doing. So if you're continually learning, you'll keep getting better. If you start to see your life like that, it's all a learning game. That's all it is. And if you go on top of that, you superimpose I'm meant to experience the full gamut of human experiences. What is that? Well, it's every emotion known to man. It's failure, it's disgust, it's anger, it's hatred, it's heartbreak. But on the opposite side of that, it's passion, it's love, it's joy, it's elation, it's all those sorts of things. So don't avoid this shit. Don't seek this shit. Because whatever you deny, whatever you resist, you'll persist. Whatever you're trying to shut out of your life, it's just going to continue to keep popping up because you haven't learnt the lesson. You haven't seen it as the game that it is. You haven't gone, what is this trying to teach me? Why does this reoccurring theme keep coming back into my life? And for me, it was like this, be the best, make the big impact. And for a little while, I denied it. I was a fucking street pharmacist. I was doing dumb shit, going out all the time, all that sort of stuff. And it was a complete squandering of the gift that I've been given as like this mental thing of like, you have to fucking make an impact. And now that I'm more aligned with that, synchronicities and magic moments happen frequently, every day almost.
Quick one. This podcast is now sponsored by Savvy Beverages, the 100% all-natural brain-boosting nootropics drink. Savvy have actually just revamped all their flavors, and let me tell you, they are amazing. My favorite flavor being the mixed berry, but they also have lime and a new flavor, passion fruit. But I'll be honest, taste is not the only reason why I love Savvy. I used to struggle with coffee, any sort of energy drink, anything that had caffeine in it, I could not have because it would set off anxiety within me. Now, what I love about Savvy is it has a 2-to-1 ratio of caffeine and a little ingredient called L-theanine. Now, here's the kicker. L-theanine allows you to experience the energy boost of caffeine without those pesky anxious side effects. It's honestly a game changer, and it's why I continue to drink Savvy. So if you're interested in trying out Savvy Beverages for yourself, head over to their website at www.savvybeverage.com.au. The link will be in the description. And as a special treat, they're offering an exclusive discount just for you. So use my discount code BETTER20, so that's BETAR 20, during your checkout to receive 20% off your order. Let's get back to the episode. Coming back to the feminine and masculine, I want to ask, what's your take on toxic masculinity?
Oh, fuck.
Because for me, I see it, there's no such thing. For me, I see it as it's the lack of masculinity.
Yeah, well, there is such thing, but it's not the way that they describe it.
Yeah.
A manly man is not toxic whatsoever. They are exactly what they're meant to be. The weaponization of masculinity are those people who are overweight, terrible socially, they live on the internet, they are not strong, resilient individuals, they are not powerful or capable men. People who are defined as those toxic masculine people are completely getting the wrong blame. The people who are toxically masculine are those that haven't developed themselves in any way, shape, or form. They don't take responsibility for their actions. They're completely like they're just victims of their own situation. And then they weaponize the fact that they're a man. They're probably bigger, stronger, can overpower a situation. They can speak louder, so they'll project their voice higher. People who yell are usually the biggest pussies. If you start raising your voice at me, I know I have nothing to be scared of.
It's just like my dog out there. Bark, no bite.
Exactly. It's a performative action.
Yeah.
So in a sense that the whole toxic masculinity thing is being aimed at people who are appropriately masculine. And this is just another way of the mainstream media to start to view this I think they realized that they fucked up in the 80s with the Rocky movies and the Sylvester Stallones and Schwarzeneggers and these strong, capable killers. I think they know they fucked up because they were breeding this population of strong individuals. Strong individuals are very hard to
control,
box in and control. Very, very difficult. If you project this idealism of, let's say, Rocky, you can go through anything and still come out the back end. Anything, you can come out the back end. That's very dangerous for someone who wants to put a shadow over everything and dome everything in, make sure it's neatly folded in all these little boxes.
Tell you what my favorite movie is? Rambo.
Rambo's a good movie.
Fucking beast.
Rambo's a very good movie.
Go into any situation and come out.
Exactly. And it's kind of like this hero's journey evolution. But now you're starting to see them switch the narrative to these lesser masculine men. Like Robert Pattinson as fucking Batman. What are we talking about? No. Yuck. It's disgusting. Like you're telling me that he is the vigilante beater up, like basher? I fucking doubt it. Like Christian Bale was believable because at least he's a little bit jacked. But what are we doing here? And I think that's all on purpose. There's no accidents, there's no mistakes, there's no coincidences. They don't want men to be strong, capable individuals. They don't want them to be in touch with their emotions. They want them to be addicted to porn, addicted to substances, alcoholics. They want to spend their money at the pokies and be drunks and idiots and all those sorts of things. They don't want to integrate the shadow side because it's inherently very dangerous for the power structure above. And again, they're extremely difficult to control if they're like that. So I don't necessarily agree with the whole toxic masculinity being aimed at the people it's being aimed at. I do agree that it exists, but it's these weak and dangerous individuals that are less capable that take their rage out on other people. That's toxic masculinity. But it's not even really toxic masculinity because they're not masculine at all.
And by, in a way, demasculating society and feminism rise, what does that do to our population when females can't find strong individuals? Because if they're higher up, they're going to look for someone higher than them. They're not going to look at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that fucks up the whole population thing, which is why men are on Tinder. I can swipe.
Yeah.
The
stats on Tinder are fucked.
Yeah.
They're fucked. I get into this conversation quite a fair bit and like the whole, the world ending, doom and gloom, all that sort of stuff. And we're starting to funnel down to this technocratic society where a lot of things are becoming askew, essentially. And like AI is going to take over or China's going to take over and all these sorts of things. You go back throughout the entirety of history and there's always been a narrative that something is coming.
Just like the internet.
Always been a narrative that something's coming. Y2K was coming. 2008 was going to be the end of the financial system. 2012, the world was going to end. The Mayans predicted it. Oh, they got the calendar wrong. So now it's going to be 2027. You've always got something down the road. And this is very articulately designed to keep you on edge, to keep your cortisol levels high, to keep your norepinephrine high, your adrenaline high. Because when you're like that, you're a good little citizen because you'll consume things at a higher rate. And that's good for the economy, which is propped up by nothingness because the Federal Reserve prints money that doesn't fucking mean anything. It just fucking pulled out of thin air. Like I had this realization when I first got a bank account. I was like, what if they just accidentally pressed one button and I had 100 grand instead of 10? Sure. Like it could be a mistake. You hear about it all the time. People get $42 million rock up in their account for no reason and they just made a transfer error. What's to say they're not doing it all the time? Like the fucking Pentagon is missing $16 trillion. Where did it go? How do you miss $16 trillion? How the fuck does that even happen? What kind of retard do you have at your accounting firm? What's going on? It's crazy.
But then they'll just print more money off.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And I think in the midst of all this, all the doom and gloom, you can paint the scenario however badly you want. They've done it throughout history the entire time. There's always something that people are separated from. And essentially, if you go right deep into the conspiratorial elements of this, I don't even call it conspiracy theories. I call them spoiler alerts because, listen, cunt, we've been right 6 months in advance for like the last 3 years, essentially. You get to this idea that it's much more a spiritual warfare than anything else of these, it depends on what theory you believe in, these demonic beings or these lizards or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a spiritual warfare to disconnect you from your origins. That's why the family unit has been broken up. That's why we completely live in societies with buildings. You ever think about people who live in apartment buildings that don't know who their neighbors are? You're living on top of each other. You don't know who they are. You ever think about when you go to the city in Sydney, how it's like this dystopian feel where no one looks at you, no one pays attention to you, no one says hello. Credit to your fucking neighbor. As soon as I got out of my car, hey, how are you?
Yeah, they're nice.
Lovely. You know what I mean? But you don't get that anymore. You don't get this tight-knit street feeling anymore. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, we used to go to our neighbor's house for dinner all the time because we lived next door to each other. We had nothing else in common, but that was enough. Today's day and age, it's completely different. Like, I don't know what my neighbors' names are. I know who they are, wave to them in the morning, but back in the 80s, you would all have street parties. All the kids would come out and play together and all those sorts of things. It was like a tribe mentality. And they're starting to manipulate this. There's a thing called Dunbar's number. It's basically you can know and interact with about 150 people at one time with importance. Anything past that starts to become overwhelming. So why do we live in cities with over 1 million people? It's purposefully disruptive. And that's why we feel this disconnected identity, with life, with living. A lot of people, a lot of men especially, are purposeless at this point in their life. It's all orchestrated. It's all a plan. It's all a plan to distract you from soul, from love, from all these different things. I know it sounds wishy-washy, but it's true.
It's true. Yeah, I feel as a society we are so disconnected in mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
And I love the thing that you just brought up around men having no purpose. A man without purpose seeks pleasure. Drugs, alcohol, porn.
Yeah.
It's
toxically masculine.
Yeah, it's happening in society every single day. And
yeah.
For me, I've even personally fallen down the trap, not drugs, not alcohol, but pornography. Massively addictive. I've fallen down that. And from time to time, I still find myself going back there, but I've got to check in with myself. I'm like, okay, where am I at right now in my life? Do I actually feel like I have a purpose? Or am I just trying to seek pleasure to get that quick dopamine hit, to feel good for a second, and then go back to my life? Do you have any advice for people that are chasing that dopamine hit?
Yeah. If you could put a bigger distance between thought and action, that's going to make a huge difference in your life. So instead of going, I'm hungry, what can I eat? Am I really hungry or am I bored? Just ask yourself the question and separate it out. It goes for any other subject of reference. I used to do this with personal training clients all the time that was severely overweight, because in their head, boredom meant snacks. They intrinsically linked those two subjects. They also intrinsically linked Netflix watching with snacks. So if we could find a way to separate that being a constructed habit, then you could start to see the pattern. And if you recognize the pattern, you can stop it in its breaks. So essentially, it's a good way to explain it is you walk past a bakery and you smell like the bread and the donuts and the croissants. You're like, oh. But you keep walking. Day number 2, they finally get you. Now your brain has intrinsically linked the smelling of the bakery with the reward for food. It's now a subconscious program.
Every time you walk past, you're going to be buying something.
Every time you walk past, you're going to salivate. When you salivate, you're going to go, ooh, it fucking tasted good last time. Got a bit of dopamine, got a bit of a sugar rush, got a bit of calories for survival. When you're in, because you are in survival mode, essentially, when you're in these modalities of addictions. Because if you were completely fulfilled in one moment or another, think about piggybacking your daughter in a playground or something like that. You're not thinking about any of that shit. You're not thinking about how hungry you are. You're not thinking about anything else except that moment intrinsically. And this is a really cool frame reference switch. Even if I know everybody talks about the present moment on and on and on. You get these Bondi hippies from fucking yoga studios. They go, oh, I'm in the present moment. Shut the fuck up. Even if you're thinking about the past or the future, where is that thinking happening? Presently. So how are you meant to get into something you can't fucking get out of?
That's a good point.
You can't, right? That's the trick. And they teach it in Buddhist philosophy. Essentially, the whole suffix of Buddhist philosophy is to ask you unanswerable questions in an attempt to make you see how stupid it is so that you can see how stupid life is, that it is all a game. So what happens if a mosquito tries to bite an iron bull?
Well, it's not going to be able to get blood from it.
Yeah, it's the nature of the mosquito to bite. It's the nature of the bull to be still. What happens? Yeah, exactly. So you'll go off and think about that.
Yeah. And
you'll go through all the different factions. Or what if the mosquito does pierce? Or I can't pierce it because it's iron. And what if the iron's weak? And what if it's rusted? And what if it's this? What if it's this? And you just go through the whole scenarios. And eventually, this is the cool part, you get to laughter. Because you're like, what the fuck? This is so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And then you recognize that you can cross-apply that. So if you were to come to me and you say, man, I got all these problems, just like you did with the pornography thing. And I'm like, okay, so who is asking me that question right now? Who are you? Show me who you are, and then I'll teach you how to solve the problem. Because then you would say that your name is, and your birth date is, and you are grown up in this location, you have this family, you've achieved these things, you live in a certain place, you drive a certain car, blah, 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 blah. None of that has answered my question. You are not the things around you. You are not you in relation to the things around you. So you start to disrupt this whole reality that you are a single entity. Because this would be a cool one for the camera. How do I know I have 5 fingers? What are the only reasons that I know these fingers exist? Because there's environment in between them. If there was no environment in between my fingers, how the fuck would I know I had 5 fingers? Exactly. So I'm inextricably linked with my environment. That doesn't mean that my skin is the border from me to the universe. It's not a border. It's all one within itself. I can't tell myself apart from the universe if the universe didn't exist. And vice versa. How would I know black if I didn't know white? I couldn't. If I had a black piece of paper here and I drew with black ink, everything's black. What did I draw? Can't tell me. Exactly. Because if everything was black, nothing would exist. If everything was you, nothing would exist. If everything was the universe, nothing would exist. You have to have this symbiotic relationship of the extrinsic differences, but implicitly you're identical. So you, as it relates to this body, are the universe experiencing a human, not a human experiencing the universe. Because when you break down the etymology of the word universe, it's you inverse. So it's you inverted to everything else. Like I'm sure there's a camera terminology that I could explain that I don't fucking know. Like when you invert an image, it's just the reflection of the other side of the image. So if you're watching a right to left, you could switch it to left to right. That's the same thing. So when you go on a Buddhist pilgrimage and you go and ask them like, oh, I've got these problems. Who's telling me that they have the problems? Because the Buddhist monk is sitting there laughing at you going, oh, come on, universe. You've got stuck again. You're trying to pretend that you're not the fucking universe. You're trying to pretend that you're not everything that there is. But you're saying that you're poor little me and I've got these problems. Where do your problems go if you are one with everything?
There is none.
Exactly. That's Buddhist philosophy.
Fuck. You've mind fucked me for the day now.
Yeah. It's cool, right? Because you get to this stage where you're like, but I'm sad. Okay. Who is sad? Show me the person who's sad.
Yeah.
And you go through this, you go, oh, because of this, because of this, because of this. And then you recognize that it's not poor little me. It's me in experience with everything else. And the fact that we're all mutually connected. The fact that we are inseparable from each other. So this is the whole thing out of the Bible. Do unto others as you would wish to be done unto you. That's because it is you. Extrinsically, you and I are very different. Implicitly, we are the exact same. Exactly the same. I'm not talking about bodies. I'm talking about the energy that fuels the body.
We look pretty like
almost identical. So this gives you such a good reverence for life because you're starting to look at things in a not a correct sense, but in a more egalitarian sense. Like you're not going to throw hateful comments to somebody to inflict damage upon them knowing that it's just you. You're not going to look at the homeless guy with disgust because you're like, that's me in another life if I had experienced the things that that guy had experienced. That's his own journey, but it's me because they're just experiencing the universe through a human.
Yeah, wow.
I get this all the time with parents. They're like, I see that through my kids because I see the world differently based on the way that they see it. Because whether you like it or not, you're conditioning your child to see the world. Like you point things out to them and say, this is a table. You point things out to them and say, this is a tree, this is green, this is red. And you're constructing their idea of reality. If you told them that a spoon was a fork, the entire time they existed, until they got to kindergarten and kids laughed at them because they said that a spoon was a fork, that would be reality breaking for them. Because they're like, I swear to God, this is a fucking spoon. My dad always told me it was a spoon. What's the difference between that silly example and everything else? Nothing. Nothing at all. So this is where it comes into perspective. And it's like, if I really see myself as what I am meant to be, the universal energy, experiencing what a human being is experiencing, where do all the problems in my life go? Because really, when we break it down, the only thing we're truly scared of is this not continuing. Why do we do anything? We eat food so we don't die. We sleep so we don't die. We earn money so we don't die. Why is death so terrifying? If death is only the undulation between life and death, just as sleep is the undulation between sleeping and awake, and we don't fear sleep, and death is the exact same thing, why are we scared of it? Why are we terrified of it? Why would you then now plan a business and have anxiety over the top of yourself to say, fuck, if this doesn't work, I'll die? So what? Who cares? It's not to say that it won't be painful or that your loved ones will be left behind or anything like that. And even to put a hole in that theory, I read a really good passage from a guy called John D. Martini, fascinating individual. And he said that the characteristics of the person who passes away, Newton's third law, energy can never be created nor destroyed, will be supplanted in those around you when the person passes to make sure that the person who is grieving the other person who's died will still experience the same thing no matter what.
I've heard about that. Like, someone dies, you see parts of them in different people.
Exactly. My best mate's mum committed suicide, and she was drug addict and dole bludger and all these sorts of things. She lived a very illustrious and experienceful life. She actually designed all of the costumes for Star Wars 2. Fucking phenomenal. And then when she had her child, she basically dedicated her life to her child, went through a lot of mental torture and all these sorts of things, and probably wasn't receptive enough to this information. Anyway, she had a very sadistic and very dark humor. I have that. So when my best friend was at the funeral, I cracked the most inappropriate joke with zero reverence for how it would land. And everybody erupted.
What was the joke?
I don't remember, but it was fucking bad. It was real bad. And Zach just looked at me, he goes, my mum told me that joke. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? He's like, no. And I just read this passage probably like 6 months earlier, and I had it in the back of my head. And I was like, fuck, it's real. Like, the energetics never really go away. The qualities will be dispersed into other people. And his girlfriend would have experienced a lot of motherly energy as a result of his mother passing. All these other people would have experienced a different faction of whatever she brought to him would now be separated into different other people. So it never really goes anywhere. So what is there to be terrified of?
So if you walk out the door, get hit by a car, do you care?
It was meant to happen.
Yeah.
There's no accidents, no coincidences, and there's no mistakes, ever. Don't believe in it. The world is too perfect to have those things. This will blow your fucking mind. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the biggest mystery on earth. We have no idea who fucking built it. We have all these different theories. The specific longitudinal axis that it lies on is the exact same number as the speed of light. The exact same number. It's 29 million something. Anyway, the latitudinal axis divisible by, I believe, 60 is 0.846. And there's 84,600 seconds in a day. So the latitudinal axis is time and the longitudinal axis is light. Also how we perceive our universe. Time and light. It's also pinpoint accurately lined up underneath Orion's belt, as are all of the other pyramids around a similar circumference of the earth in China, in Peru, in Nepal. They all have pyramids. And they're all lined up specifically underneath here. How the fuck did they figure it out if they had no telescopes? How did they set that up? Crazy. Exactly. It's like unexplainable. And yet, if you go deeper into that theory, there's no accidents. That's on purpose. That was meant to happen the exact way that was meant to happen. Why? Because it didn't happen any other way. Same as our life experiences. You would have gone through something perceptually terrible. You're like, fuck, why did this happen to me? And if you keep that energy, you're going to keep metastasizing. anxiety thoughts in your head because you're like, it fucking shouldn't have happened. Rather than, well, it didn't happen any other way. Why? Because it didn't. Okay, so it was meant to happen. Everything was meant to happen for a reason.
On that, I want to question you. What's your take then on suicide?
Good question. I think it's also meant to happen.
Why?
This is kind of like the same argument against God in a sense. Like, I'm not religious, but I do believe in like a universal energy. It's kind of the same argument against God in terms of, why do children get cancer? If God is an all-loving being, why are there kids that die with cancer? Because if there weren't kids that died with cancer, we wouldn't be able to appreciate the ones that didn't. It's one side of the same coin. Now, suicide is one of those subjects that I believe that they're going through this spiritual incarnation. The reason, at least in my understanding of it, I've had moments where I thought about it, but not consciously contemplated it and like set up a plan or anything like that. At least in my experience, it's my understanding that people would get to a stage where they're like, my problem is too great to conquer. That's how I perceive it. The hole that I've dug myself into is too deep. No one could ever transverse this hole. And it's the opposite to the theory of what I just espoused in the Buddhist philosophy of, you don't even exist anyway. They're taking themselves too seriously. That's what I start to think. Because nothing is ever really that serious when you think about it. The game of life is genuine, but it's not serious. Again, because we go back to this whole death thing, they're just going to be incarnated into something else. And whether you believe that it's a down step or an up step, depending on what your life was lived, I know the Hindus believe that, like you reincarnate into something higher if you had a higher purpose. Even I read this during the week, there's parts of Egypt that they found where when they were doing cremations of people, they cremated them in a specific way that their heart would crystallize into an amber stone or a piece of their heart. And then they'd test the stone for purity to see how far they went along the enlightenment scale. It's fucking crazy when you think about it. So they would have a perception, because they believed very heavily in the afterlife, they would have a perception of how that person lived their life and how that would carry them to a certain stage of the afterlife. And then it was deducible by mathematics based on how they cremated them and weighed the stone and tested purity and all that sort of stuff. So in a sense, it's like, it depends on your viewpoint of the world. I don't really see myself going through it, but I understand that a lot of other people don't have an ability to receive this information when they're level-headed, for instance. It's obviously a fucking huge epidemic. It's a problem at the moment. But in saying that, I think this whole, I like the idea of being a lot more open about it. I like the idea of being a lot more talkative about it. Like the whole, it's not weak to speak thing, great initiative. It's fantastic. I push back a little bit on the mental health subject, just in a sense, because I think there's a really good poem I read on my podcast yesterday. It's called Equipment. And essentially, you have the same equipment that every other great man has ever had. You have a brain to use, 2 legs, 2 arms. You have a heart that beats, all that sort of thing. That's enough to get you started. You don't need any strike of motivation. You don't need any strike of discipline or anything else. So what was the one thing that made you start this podcast? You can't tell me because it doesn't exist. It's a myriad of different things that was all put together and all formulated in this idea that you've nurtured and cared for and grown and watered and fertilized, and it's become this thing. And still, it's not finished because it can grow from here and take new lengths. And that's what life is essentially. As soon as we stop seeing it like that, the hope starts to fade. The passion starts to fade. The purpose starts to fade. And I empathize with these people because they start to think that they are their condition. They are their problems. I am depressed. I am anxious. No, you're not. You really are not. I think we have to be very careful with the words that we use because when you go into like the etymology of words, sentence, what's another use for the word sentence that doesn't describe a bunch of words?
Jail sentence.
Jail sentence, exactly. So you are sentencing yourself as a result of the words that you use. How do you understand what a word means? You spell it. cast a spell. That's why you have to be super careful of the words that you use. If you're saying, I am such and such, well, then you will start to identify with that. If you identify with it, it becomes part of your psyche. It's very difficult to get out of that hole. Extremely difficult. Rather than putting a tail end on that, just finish the sentence there. I am. That's it. See how that feels energetically. Don't attach anything to the back of it. Don't say, I am anxious, I am happy, I am anything. Because even if you say, I am happy, you start to identify with being happy. And then when you're not happy, it's against your identity. Then it will be a fucking problem. When you're sad, it's a problem. No, it's not. You're meant to be here to experience the full gamut of human experiences. There's nothing wrong with feeling sad. Absolutely nothing wrong with feeling sad. Absolutely nothing wrong with feeling angry. My ex-missus was big on positive psychology. Positive psychology is fucking retarded. Don't go down that route. Don't go down the rabbit hole, because all you will do is resist the negative side of your consciousness. It's going to create a lot more problems for you. I have a particular affinity to cut straight to the point. Just like we was talking about, fuck the small talk. So much so that sometimes like my barbs at people will be they're not malicious in their intent. They're not venomous in their intent, but some people might take it that way. She always used to pull me up on that. She said, you have to be nicer to people. And I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. But in a sense, you have to have a receptivity from both of those things. I'm not saying go out and be a fucking asshole. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But I am saying that it's part of the whole. And some things that we do unconsciously, we don't know why we do them. And I've started to materialize a theory that, again, there are no accidents, there's no coincidences. If you're unconsciously quite mean to somebody for some reason, that might tip them over the edge to start thinking about the way that they're living their life. You never know. It goes both ways. A kindness out of no reason can fucking change someone's day for no reason. I don't talk about this much because I don't want the voyeurism or anything like that off the back of it, but once, twice a week, I'll pay for an old couple's meal at a cafe that I eat at every morning, and I'll just fuck off. I won't wait there for the thank you. I won't wait there for the gratification or anything like that. I'll just do it because I think it's a nice thing to do. And I think it'll make someone's day. And if I can make their day, maybe I can make their week, their month, their year. I don't know what they're going through. I have absolutely no idea what their life is. I don't even know their names. I'll never see them again. But it's enough for me to know that I did something to make a positive impact. But that goes both ways. We can't deny the negative aspect. Because like I've said with my story, some of the worst negatives that I've been through have been the best fucking things I've ever been through. So if someone throws a jab at you and it cuts you deeper than it should, why did that piss me off so much? Why did what he say ring so true for me? Maybe I need to think about that. Maybe that's an area of my psyche I haven't developed yet. Maybe that's a pathway for me to look into.
If it cuts you deep, it means there's an element of it that's true.
Usually it's true. Exactly. Why is it true? Why do I think it's true? What is the truth in this situation? And then you can start to have a game with it. Because again, it's sincere, but it's not serious. Like if you take it serious, you're just going to be a pouty poo face and you're just going to fucking hate that guy. But if you take it as the game, you're like, why did that piss me off? That's interesting. I'm curious about this. Why did it set me ajar? And now you have a profound understanding of why it pissed you off. Then you can start to play the game of why does everything else piss you off? Then you get to a stage where I'm at where people always say to me, they're like, oh, do you ever fight in public? Right. The amount of things that you would have to do to me physically, because nothing you could say would ever get me to throw hands. Ever. Doesn't happen. But I know several people that are complete opposite of that. They're just on a fucking tripwire and anything will blow them completely out of proportion. Why? It's because they haven't integrated this other side of them.
This has been interesting.
I said we had a riff to go off and I didn't lie.
Yeah, wow. This is why I love having these conversations, especially with people like yourself. Like, I come into this because I'm naturally curious and I like to learn, and I'll definitely be going back and listening to this because right now I cannot process everything you've just said. But
I usually get that response.
Yeah, fuck.
I like doing this sort of stuff because for a long, long time, I was perceptually noted as a meathead.
Yeah.
And complete opposite of that. Like I said, I have this affinity for the warrior monk.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's increasingly very capable and very dangerous, but also uses it for the better good. But in terms of like an intellect and an emotional understanding and a physical understanding, because I think in a sense it's emotionality, it's spirituality, it's physicality, and it's mentality. I think they're the 4 key cornerstones. And then as it relates to the physical body, it's health, wealth, relationships. And I think that's how I start to subdivide the way that I do things. I'm like, okay, well, what needs a little bit of a top up? Am I getting too involved in this for an emotional aspect? Am I getting involved in this for a wealth aspect, for a health aspect, and health can be detrimental. Like you see people counting calories. Not good for a lot of people because they start to take it way into the depths that it doesn't need to go. And then it becomes a negative rather than a positive. Same thing with relationships. Guys especially try to fuck as many people as possible. That's not a good way to go about things. Like you will learn the hard way. Trust me, I've done it. It's not a good, the hedonistic treadmill lifestyle is not good. You don't want to be in that fucking in that hamster wheel. Don't want to be there. So I think having an objective view of the entirety of everything, this is why I like having these conversations, because I think I espouse that quite well. Be capable on all fronts. And that will never, ever be a disservice to anybody in your life, including yourself.
Yeah, the way you've articulated yourself today, bro, is next level. And yeah, I know what you've spoken about has already impacted me, and when I listen back to it, it's going to impact me on a deeper level, and the listeners as well. Especially because this is like a mental health podcast, a lot of people are stuck in the mindset of labels, identities, and I'm sad and all that kind of shit. Imagine if they took on your mindset to life, how much happier would they be? I believe suicide's preventable by incorporating this mindset shift. It's simple, and I love that you were speaking about death and your mindset when it comes to death's going to happen. You just move into the other side of the coin kind of thing. That's a big thing because death is like one of the top fears in the world. Yeah. And people don't take risks because it may lead to death. But what happens if you do take that risk and you achieve something even bigger? Well, even if you die, and as you said, everything happens for a reason, you die and then you go into your next life, which is, amazing and beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting.
Think about it from this perspective on the whole death conversation. The Day of the Dead in Mexico or Spain is something to be revered. They celebrate death.
I watched a YouTube video on that. That was interesting.
Yeah, they celebrate it. It's something they're very, very comfortable with. I went to my best mate Zach's. His dad passed away not long after his mum. And Greek Orthodox, they leave the casket open. They go and kiss the forehead of the person who's died. Most Aussie families be like, what the fuck, bro? Like, keep that thing away from me. Completely different reception of it across cultures. So even in the sense of the world, in African languages, they don't have a word for suicide.
I've heard that.
They don't understand it.
Same as indigenous culture in Australia.
Indigenous cultures is exactly right, because they're much more spiritually in tune. They're much more connected to their environment. They're much more connected to their community. If we weren't so segregated, like when was the last time you saw your grandparents?
Well, my granddad passed away in January. So I seen him at Christmas time. It was the last time.
Yeah. And then before then, what, like 6 months?
Yeah.
Before then, 6 months. Before then, 6 months.
We'd only seen him once or twice a year.
Exactly, right? When you're in an indigenous culture, the grandparents are there, the aunties are there, the uncles are there, all of the cousins are there. So if you have a problem, you can go and speak to 6 people that are older than you very easily and get 6 different perspectives from 6 different lives, knowing that they all have your best interest at heart. You go speak to a therapist. I don't fucking know you. I don't know who you are. What about my grandfather? He's been with me the entire time. He's seen me grow up as a child. He's seen my pitfalls. He's seen the things that I do really well. My uncle, the same. He's seen the things that I've done poorly, and he sees the things that I've done really well. He has context for the situation of why I'm bringing this to him. That makes a huge difference. A psychologist mind you, they're fucking retards. The only time they go into psychology is because they need the help themselves. In the grand majority of the people that I've met who have become psychologists, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but they have no context of you as a person. They have to make up the idea of who you are based on what you are willing to share with them. With family, that's different. They've seen everything. They've seen all the niggles and the warts and everything. They've seen all the really bright moments. They've seen all the really dark moments. So now when they give you advice, it means something. It lands a little bit better. So these people that are in the suicide conversation, they're just disconnected. They're disconnected from their family, from their environment, from their feelings, from the way that they perceive themselves within all of those things. And that's kind of where it gets down to. Like, I looked at a slideshow on TikTok yesterday, and there's a guy at a bar, and he said, "Can I get one more drink? I'm about to leave." And the guy said, "No, we're closed." And he goes, "Oh, please, like I'm super rich, super wealthy. I'll give you as much money as you make in a day for one drink." And he goes, "No, that's not how we work here." And he goes, "What is troubling you, by the way?" He goes, "Oh, is it that obvious?" And he goes, "For the last 20 to 30 years, I've dedicated my life to building companies and making sure that I can provide for my family and give them everything they ever wanted." And he goes, "How does your wife feel about that?" And she goes, "You know what? She's been the best. She's been the biggest support, but now we're kind of like separating out. I spend way too much time at work and I don't pay attention to enough to her. And I'm conscious of this, but the work, it has to get done." And he goes, "How do your kids feel about it?" And he said, he goes, "Well, I've given them everything they've ever wanted, but unfortunately that has developed them into somebody who's had no hardships and they're spoiled." And he goes, "Yeah, that's how it happens when you prioritize this one area of your life over everything else." And then he goes, "Please, man, like one more drink. Like I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to do this sort of thing." He goes, "No, that's not how we operate." And he turns the whiskey bottle around and it says time on it. Like his time is gone. And he just finished saying how he was going to sell the company. He was going to rebuild his relationships. He was going to get back in tune with his kids. He's going to be a part of their lives. But the metaphor for the whiskey bottle of time being empty is that it was his time to die. So the demons came up behind him and they said, "Can you escort this guy out of the bar? He's finished." And he died before he ever got the chance to reprimand those actions, to change the story. And the fucking beautiful thing about that I put into my life every single day, don't wait. Never, ever, ever put anything off. What for? What are you waiting for? Like me and my best friend Zach, all the stuff that he's gone through, every phone call ends with "I love you, bro." Every time. Because I don't know if that cunt's going to die tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to die tomorrow. I don't know if my sister or my brother or anything like that. And it comes back to this connected feeling. You're telling people that you fucking care about them. That's necessary to have in your life. And I understand that these people do segregate themselves in terms of like the suicide conversation. They might not have any friends or family they can rest on. But fuck, try and develop it. Try and find something in your life that you have this connection to, that you're vividly passionate about. And you will start to attract more of the same thing. The beauty of it is the more that you give out, the more the reciprocity starts to happen. This is a business concept. It's a conversation concept. It's a compliment concept. It's a happiness concept. It's an anger concept. It's everything. Everything is reciprocal. And like I said, karma isn't the receipts of your doing. It is your doing. So you will receive what you continually do as a result of who you're being. So if you're continually sharing all of this sort of stuff, fuck man, it's going to come back tenfold. Absolutely. Like it's a really good business principle. If you give away all of your shit for free, people will buy the implementation from you because they're like, holy fuck, this guy's giving away all this shit for free. This is more than what I could buy from this guy and he's giving it away. I feel indebted to him for a certain reason. I've got to give back. I've got to get a relationship with this person and show my appreciation. That goes for every other facet of your life. Every other conceptual arrangement that you can think of. If you have like a giver's first mentality, you'll never ever lose. It's impossible. So I think for people going through tough times in their life, and it starts to be quite a selfish endeavor because you're like, oh, I'm so disconnected. I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. Imagine going to give a homeless guy $50 and seeing his fucking face light up. You're like, fuck, I shared a common connection with this guy. I then made his day. I learned a little bit about him. I have a profound and renewed appreciation for my situation because I have a roof over my head. I have a job. I have people in my life. This guy has nothing. And yet he still cracked a smile and shared a story with me. You can start to change the narrative around your own situation. You go, fuck, okay, this is the way forwards. I can start to give back. I can start to push this stuff forwards. And then I can start to completely change my reality. And the things you look at don't change. You change the things you look at. Or you change the way you look at things. You can look at any given set of circumstances and find the positive in it or find the negative in it. It just depends on what your presupposition is. If you want to find the positive, you can find it. If you are burdening yourself with always finding a negative, you're always going to find it. Just like you spoke about your reticular activating system. You buy a fucking white Hilux, you see white Hiluxes everywhere.
Yep.
They were always there. It's just now that you've told your brain that it's important and your reticular activating system is now going, this is important. I'm going to show Nick as much of these as possible. Same for every other area of your life.
Man, thank you so much. This has been...
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This has been a deep chat. As I said, like this conversation of connection keeps coming up. Every podcast I've done, we speak about mental health and what's happening in society. It's the lack of connection. How the fuck do we solve that?
It's a good question. I think people have to be willing to accept that it comes from their responsibility. You can't be a victim and blame things on other people. It's never going to work. It never has worked. It never will. You have to accept responsibility that it's partly your fault that you're not experiencing connection. Whether you're a little bit more guarded around certain people, you don't open up as much. It's very easy. Like I found this when I was single previously. The more that I was on the front foot in terms of being honest and open, the more that I got that in terms of reciprocity. If I was closed and guarded, I got a lot more of that as well. And I started to learn that as I started to get older with my current girlfriend now. The more that I opened up to her and told her about previous experiences that I was maybe holding back because I was embarrassed or insecure or something like that, the better everything else got off the back of that because she saw who I really was in that moment. I was able to give her a vivid picture of the entire scenario where she was now able to supplant her own empathy, kindness, and all those sorts of things on that. And this, again, goes back to one of the first things we talked about. When it's the scariest to jump, you fucking jump. If you feel that gut-wrenching fear, pull the trigger. Go for it. That's the best time that you could be acting. Because then you start to rewire your brain to think that fear is a guiding mechanism. Now you're the one that's moving through fear. How powerful is that? That's addictive, that sort of stuff. And then you can be a leader and show other people how to do that as well. And then they're going to start to follow you. And then they're going to probably blame you for your ability that they've shown, that you've shown to them. Fuck, man, I used to think that fear ruled my life, and now every time I feel it, I act. How fucking cool is that? So now we start to build this community of people that have like-minded interests. And it doesn't matter, like, I run a podcast, you run a podcast. If you were, I don't know, basket weaving, I don't fucking know, finger painting, who gives a shit? I can see the appreciation for your discipline onto that element as it results to you fighting through fear and going for it. Now, the things that you have in common aren't the activities that you do, but it's who you are. There's no better way to feel connected than that. Why do you think rugby league teams are so connected? Why do you think all those guys are such a tight-knit group? It's like a communal suffering. It has nothing to do with the league. It has nothing to do with the tackles. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's that we are voluntarily committing to something that's fucking hard, and we're coming out the other side, no matter how terrified we are. And we're coming out the other side better, stronger, more aligned individuals. Guess what? We're all fucking living. We're all here for one reason or another. And people will fight back on that and they'll say, oh, why didn't I be born? Well, you were that fucking funny look in your dad's eye when he first saw your mother. That was you. So you did ask to be born, and you are here. And the odds that you are here at the specific birth date that you had while your parents had sex 9 months earlier, I know you don't want to think about it, but the explanation's going here. 1 in 6 trillion are the odds that you came out the way that you look, feel, talk, experience the world as at that certain time, that certain day. You hear stories all the time of labor going for 36 hours. Why didn't yours? Who knows? It could have just easily, but then you would have a different star sign. You would have different numerology. You would have different things as it results to the way that you do things and perceive things. Maybe there was a super traumatic birth and your parents started to fucking resent you because you wouldn't fucking get out. And then that perpetuated into you feeling a certain type of way through your childhood, and then them resenting you and all these sort of things. And you grew up in a torn household. But now you're a beacon of light for people who've gone through that torn household so that they can now align with you. And through your own struggles and your own resilience, you can now become a motivator for the people that have gone through similar things. See how nothing is ever misplaced?
Yeah. Life happens for you, not to.
Exactly. It happens through you, essentially.
Josh, we have a closing tradition on the podcast where
lay it on me.
The previous guest leaves a question for the next guest.
Oh, I did listen to one of these.
Yeah.
Right.
So the question for you is, what's your earliest childhood memory that you feel plays out now in an area of your life?
Good question. I'm not sure that it's the earliest, but it's definitely a significant one. Good question. Which one should I tell? I've got two. I think this one is more in line with the podcast, so I'll say this one. When I was in year 4, I was 8. I had what I assumed was a best friend and another kid that he liked, but I didn't like that much. This other kid turned my best mate against me by telling him lies that I didn't say. And then there was another kid involved that wanted to be like in the 3 that we were. So they basically excluded me. I fucking threw hands at 8 years old. I remember grabbing the kid's shirt and just like unloading footy punches at him. So I ended up getting taken to the principal's office. And my mum was the canteen manager, so she was always at school. And they pulled her in. And I remember seeing the look on her face, like she must have had a fucking stressful day or something like that. Like they tried to run the canteen as a side business to help my dad pay bills and all this sort of shit, and she wasn't working. And I now know this as an adult because of all the things on top of the situation that I didn't recognize as an 8-year-old. So she was filthy with me. She's like, "Wait till your dad hears about this." I'm like, "Oh, that's the worst. That's the worst sentence you can ever hear." Because however mad they are, dad's going to take it up another notch.
Yep.
You're like, "Oh, fuck." So like driving in the car on the way home, and I get home and dad's late at work, and it's just that suspense feeling. It's that fucking, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know it's going to be bad. Like that sort of building suspense thing, like a horror movie. Like they just go on, and then they finally jump out at you. Anyway, so he comes home and he's like, "All right, all your fucking toys, all your WWE shit you love playing with in the garage for a month." And I'm like, "Oh, bro. Like, wow, I thought I was in trouble, but that's way too far." Anyway, so I got pretty fucking upset at that. And anyway, he puts the toys in the garage, and we had like a bit of a massive house that we used to live in, but it was a garage that went down probably like this height. So there was wooden stairs leading into the garage. He just threw the toys in there. And I was like, "Oh, that's like a fuck you to me, even more than like taking him away." Like he kind of stepped over the barrier there. And he goes, "If this ever happens again, they're never coming out." I turned around down the stairs and went, "Shut up." Fucking gave it to him. And man, I turned and ran because I knew he'd chase me. And he sprinted up the stairs, grabbed me, smacked the fuck out of me. And it was the worst. I remember sitting in my bedroom crying, and I was like, "Fuck, surely this is rock bottom. Nothing else can get as bad as this." And then I remembered that I had the whole friend thing going on as well. So I went to school the next day, and I fucking had no one to sit with. I had to basically tell my mum I wanted to move schools because I was like, I fucking have to sit here by myself. And I started to internalize that as I'm different. I'm weird. Like kids don't like me. This is weird. And I still have that. That's never gone away. But the perception and the understanding of what that means is completely and radically different. I fucking love that now because I'm weird. I'm different. Like there's nothing about me that is extremely similar to anybody else. And okay, yeah, you have a big nose, or you have a fucking wart on your face, or I don't know, one eye is blue, one eye is brown. And it's just this weird thing. You see models come out with this all the time where they have, it's called heterochromia. There's one eye blue, one eye brown, or they're 2 different colors. And now they start to use it to their advantage. And people do this with freckles or red hair or things that usually you get picked on, but now they are being shown as something to be rewarded. That's the exact same thing as all your life experiences, all your weirdness, all your quirks, all the things you don't tell anybody. They're not things to be ashamed of. They're the individualistic things that make you you. When I was a young kid, I was like, fuck, I'm different, I'm weird, this sucks, I just want to fit in. That's the worst thing you can do. Fitting in is the worst thing you can do. Because whether you like it or not, your specific uniqueness as it results to you is going to attract the exact people that are like you in some way. And if you fake that, you're never going to have genuine connection, genuine relationships. If I tried to be like the non-rambunctious, low confidence, solemn sort of guy, I would attract those people in my life and I wouldn't be able to be myself. So the running commentary inside my head would always be like, this fucking sucks. Like, you've got heaps of mates, but they're all fake. What the fuck is the point of that? There's no genuine element to that. And that's what I started to learn later in my life when I started to study this sort of stuff and really read and get a receptivity for this. The more you are yourself, it doesn't matter what else happens because there's a genuine aspect to that. And people start to feel the energetics of that. And then they go, I really like this or I really fucking hate it. Guess what? Those cunts that hate you, we're going to hate you no matter what you said. They just don't like the look of your face. And that's all right. Because if you didn't have people that hate you, you wouldn't know the people that loved you. You have to have the two sides of the coin. I used to get this in business all the time and I was like kind of upset that I wasn't pertaining to everybody. If you pertain to everybody, you align with no one. You're too thinly spread across too many different categories. So what, you like Game Boys and fucking whatever you're into. So what, you like solving Rubik's Cubes. Who gives a shit? So what, you like painting or anything like that. Doesn't matter what subject it is. So what? That's important to you, and you're going to find other people that it's important to as well as a result of your passion and vigor and energy. They're the best relationships. They're the ones you want because there's nothing fake about it. It's exactly the same as that best mate you haven't spoken to in 6 months. You ring him, you pick up right where you left off.
Yep.
Right where you left off every single fucking time. That's that sort of connectivity. And for you to lie and say that it's your differences that make you weird and make you not stand out. No, it's the opposite. Your differences are the thing that make you weird. They are the thing that make you stand out, but you're going to stand out to the right people as a result of harnessing that to your advantage and being genuine as a result of that. Don't be fake. Don't appeal to other people. Don't appease other people. Like, I'm very good at this. I'll rip fucking the worst statements and like fully packed restaurants. And my sister's like, don't fucking say that kind. I'm like, well, it's been said now. What are they going to do about it? And I think it's that genuine aspect that's infectious with most people. Like, you see, did you watch the McGregor documentary?
Haven't yet, no.
You see all the ups and downs of his life, but the main constant is that he is authentically himself. And that's something you can't fake. And you get such a receptivity to it because you're like, holy fuck, I see so much of what I do in that guy. And that we are all the same. We just have our different interests and all these other bits and pieces, but you're like, holy shit. All through all the ups to all the downs, as long as you maintain genuine to yourself, as long as you maintain authenticity, you'll be fucking sweet. No matter what.
Yeah, I love that. Because when it comes to this podcast, in the beginning, I was trying to be so broad and reach out, right? And I wasn't really kind of being myself. Now I've kind of dialed it down. It's like, yeah, I'm focused on men. Yes, I'm around mental health. But for me, it's how do you be a high performer? That's why I get to speak to people like yourself, because I get to learn, the listeners get to learn. And if someone listens to this and like, oh, okay, I'm going to implement this mindset. I want to be better, be a better version of myself, the best version of myself, be a high performer. Well, then where does the poor mental health or the illness stuff go?
Yeah.
It goes. It's preventative. They're the kind of people that I want to speak to, people that have gone through shit, come out the other side to then tell it. Not the pity party of poor me, I got bad mental health, I've gone through all my traumas and stuff. Yeah. I'm not interested in that. And people get hurt by that, but I'm not here to make friends with everyone. I'd rather be blunt and honest than be fake and tell people what they want to hear to make them feel good about themselves, because how does that make change? It doesn't. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where I push back with the whole movement for a little bit, because saying that you are your problems, that you are a broken toy, I don't align with that whatsoever. And some people feel comfort within that because it starts to explain the way that they live their life. That's fine, but it's not for me.
I want to hit you with a bonus question. This was actually the question for the previous guest, but I think this is going to be awesome for you too. If you could change one thing about our culture, what would it be, and how are you playing your part to bring that change?
I'm going to answer it in a funny way. I wouldn't.
Why is that?
It's perfect already.
Yeah.
All the things that I find perceptually negative or harmful or disruptive of peace, anything like that. If I was to attempt to change one of those things, essentially what I'm saying is I'm resisting it. If I resist it, it will persist and it will take me with it. I'm not going to attempt to swim up the river backwards and exhaust myself only to end up in the same place. We need those people. We need those hateful leftist fucking soy drinking cunts because how would we know ourselves if they didn't exist? We need them to relate to know that we are separated. And they might fill a void for somebody on the other side of that coin, that someone they align with their viewpoints. They look to the transgender movement, they look to the rights movement, they look to all this stuff and they start to align themselves with that. Do I think it's right? Fuck no. Do I have to think it's right? Absolutely not. If we went down the line of every political argument, I'm sure you and I would disagree on a whole lot of things. I'm sure of it, 100% positive. That's why it exists. Again, it's purported by mainstream media to segregate parts of the population. Even if you're a black lesbian, you still have an argument to be had with somebody who's more marginalized than you, as in like a black transvestite, because they have more fucking points to be sad about. So in a sense, like I wouldn't change anything because we need everybody. Even in a sense, like the people that are stupid angry for no reason. My old man was one of those guys. He'd fucking blow his top at any given second and you had to walk on eggshells around him because you never knew when it was going to happen. That was the perfect environment for me to grow up in because my kids will never, ever, ever experience that. Ever. I don't get angry. I look like an angry cunt, but I fucking do not get angry. Even my missus, she said to me, she goes, I've had boyfriends in the past that would fucking yell back at me. They'd fire me up. I'd start throwing shit at the walls. You're like water. You completely dissolve the argument every single time. I'm like, yeah, because what's the fucking point of going on? What's the point of throwing petrol to the fire when I know that all that happens when you get angry at something is you delay what was meant to happen anyway.
True.
That's it. And it's not to say that anger isn't useful, because it is very useful. Don't avoid being angry, but don't weaponize it. Don't use it as your only method of doing things. So we need the angry cunts. We need the sad cunts. If no one was poor, how would I know that I'm not poor? You know what I mean? If no one was rich, how would I know that I'm not rich? There's this receptivity that you have to have these people in your life for all different reasons. But the main reason, the main through line is that you have to experience the full gamut of the human experience. People are going to piss you off. If you try and remove those people, then you're going to miss the other side of the coin for enjoyment. You can't get rid of one side of the coin. Not how it works.
Yeah, that's been the big topic of today, is seeing both sides of the coin. And thank you for sharing what you've shared today. You've got me thinking, got the listeners thinking, no doubt. Man, where can the people find you and support everything that you do?
HBU coaching on everything. So Instagram, TikTok, only boomers use Facebook now, so I'm not on that. YouTube channel's funny. It's like Jiu-jitsu related content, but you get a lot of kind of background into what makes a professional athlete's lifestyle. Like I talk a little bit about philosophy and stuff on there. But if you've liked the theme of this, I'm on a bunch of different podcasts, but the theme of this is most closely linked to my Mindset King podcast. It's just solo, zero production. There's literally a Rode lapel mic plugged into my iPhone, and I just riff for like 35 minutes. And it's really cool because in a sense, it's the way that you start to metastasize your own ideas. And when people give you feedback, it's like, oh, I've now got a different perspective on that same idea. So now I can add that to the collection and then start to look at it from this person's perspective. And they say, well, I don't agree with this the way that you said this. Okay, why? Like, it's just an idea. I'm not my idea. So please tell me, why do you think that that is incorrect? So then I can expand my own level of awareness and start to open my mind even further and go, oh, I never thought about it like that. Like, my missus is amazing at that. I'll tell her a story of what a guy said about his missus. And then she goes, yeah, but what's her side? And always spins it back. And I'm like, fuck, I forgot about that. Because there's always three sides to a story, right? There's your side, there's their side, then there's a truth.
Mm.
And I think balancing that sort of thing with a podcast platform and doing more long form content, that's how you start to get people to think about ideas better. But then I get the benefit of people listening to it and bringing feedback to me, where I start to change the perception of the idea as it results to a lot of other people. If it's additive, I'll add it in. If it's negative, I'll think about why it is and then construct a counterpoint to that. Not to be argumentative, but to then think about it in a different way of maybe something I didn't perceive earlier. So this sort of stuff is literally all I talk about. I'm completely addicted to the idea of all of this, all the mindset stuff. And I just think it's the most powerful thing you can probably invest your time into, is changing the way you look at things. Because the things that you look at won't change all that much, really, when you think about it. There's going to be nighttime, there's going to be daytime, there's going to be people that get old, and there's going to be, younger people in your life. There's going to be drives to work, there's going to be working of some capacity, there's going to be birthday parties, weddings, events, all that sort of stuff. You're going to eat food, you're going to do all the things that humans do. But unless you change the way that you look at it, it's never really going to change. There's going to be some mundanity towards it. And this is what I think people sort of get stuck in the loop of thinking. Like, oh, fuck, I'm just going through the motions. Like, this is the same thing every day. Really, it's not. Like, you never step in the same river twice, because you're not the same person and it's not the same river. So when you drink your coffee that you drink every single day, it's a brand new one. You've never drank the same one before. You've never had that one before. And even if you did have one 10 minutes ago, it's still not the same one. Even the thoughts you have, this was a real kicker for me. The thoughts you have are brand new every single time. It is impossible to have a chain of thoughts. Doesn't exist.
Don't we recycle thoughts though?
Yeah. There's no loop of them though. There's no connection between those two thoughts. It's just your conscious repetition of them. That's all it is. You're choosing to select that thought again and again and again and again and again. But there's no chain of it. So if there's no chain to be broken, what's the problem?
True that. Man, thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Absolute pleasure.
Oh, if you got some value out of today's episode, and I know you bloody have, if you're like me, my mind is gone. Please leave some feedback. Like, share, subscribe. Check out Josh, everything that he's doing. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.